The Indian Child Welfare Act is a 1978 federal law that overrides state law when it comes to child abuse cases, foster care cases, or adoption cases involving children who are eligible for membership in an Indian tribe. And the reason that's important is because eligibility for tribal membership depends exclusively on genetics. And as a result, this law provides a separate and substandard set of rules for children who fit the genetic profile of Native American, rules that provide less protection than the state laws that govern cases involving children of all other races. Well, this case involves a 5-year-old Ohio boy who's lived in Ohio his entire life. He was born there. He lives with a foster family that loves him in Ohio. And unfortunately, due solely to his genetics, an Indian tribe in Arizona is trying to force him to be sent almost 2,000 miles away from his home to live on a reservation in Arizona where he's never visited with a family that he's never even met, simply because they share his genetic profile. We're asking Ohio courts to rule that this case belongs in Ohio. A child who's born in Ohio and has lived in Ohio his entire life shouldn't have his case decided by a tribal court thousands of miles away in a state he's never visited, simply because of the color of his skin. Unfortunately, Icwa provides tribal governments with unconstitutionally broad powers to decide cases based on race, including in this case. According to a rule that lawyers call the minimum contacts rule, state and federal judges can't reach across state borders to decide cases that involve people who have never had any connection with the place where that court sits. But Icwa allows tribal courts to take cases out of state court and send them into tribal courts instead, even if the child has never visited tribal lands, simply because of the genes in his blood. It's important to remember that Icwa does not apply on Indian reservations. It only applies off reservations to children who fit the genetic profile of Native American. These kids may have no idea that they're Indians. They don't speak a tribal language, they don't practice a tribal religion, they have no familiarity with tribal culture or history. They live in neighborhoods the same that you and I live in. But because of their race, the Indian Child Welfare Act takes away their constitutional right to have their interests prioritized and requires them to abide by race-based prescriptions on who can adopt them, who can foster them, and whether they can be protected against abusive or neglectful situations. That's wrong and unconstitutional. We at the Goldwater Institute are committed to equal protection for Indian children. These children are citizens of the United States entitled to the same protections that the rest of us enjoy.